Still wait. Thank you, Adrian. And we're waiting on Leon Gurton to join us. And we also have Associate Commissioners Harriet Ranvig, Henry Hardy, and Pauline Downing, and then some other folks that frequently show up at the meetings.
This is Jamie. I am also an associate commissioner.
Sorry, I
No worries.
did not recall. I knew you didn't apply to be a full commissioner, and I am so sorry that it slipped my mind that you were appointed an associate commissioner. Thank you, Jamie.
No problem.
I think let's start the roll call. Bonnie Dennis, present. Holly.
Present.
Thank you. Brian. I see a raised hand.
Present.
And Leon. I just started roll call.
Hi, Leon is here.
Great. So I'm going to start with my chair's report. The outstanding business, the MAAB, the Mass Architectural Access Board, has moved the hearing on 114 Professors Row, which is a Tufts dormitory that's looking to do accessibility renovations. It will now be held November 14th at 1 p.m. via Microsoft Teams. I can share the link to that after further into the meeting when I have a little bit more space to type. And something that Harriet mentioned earlier, the National Institutes of Health are doing a long COVID study that some Boston area hospitals are participating in. And whether you have COVID now, had it before, or never had COVID, you may be able to participate. Participants are paid for each visit. And again, I will drop the link to that in the chat in a little bit as well. Harriet, did you want to share more about your experience with that?
Okay, sorry, I muted myself. Okay, my partner and I, he found out about it from a Washington Post article and then told me about it. And it goes across the country. You just have to look up Recover and NIH, and it'll give you give you the information, and you put in your zip code, and then it'll tell you what medical facilities are participating. So for us in the Boston area, it's Boston Medical Center and Beth Israel Deaconess. And the cool thing is you get an incredible physical like I've never had probably in my life, in terms of 20 different blood studies, all different sort of stuff. So you can, and that will go your chart. If you're linked, if you have a health chart, it can go straight to your PCP. So you actually have a lot more information about your health that can be useful, in a bigger picture. So it's 1 3-hour intake, and then probably an hour, but I don't know at what intervals, 6-month intervals or longer for 4 years. So they really hope people will be in the area they want people that might be here for 4 years, or in the area where you do the study. So that's it. Thank you.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Harriet. A couple of housekeeping things. I note that Commissioner Katie Milton has also joined us.
Yay.
Sorry, Katie, we got started without you. And in the chat, Leon has requested to get a link to the stream text. So can our captioner share that for anyone who might need it?
If you hit live transcript, you can see it, or is that something different?
This is
Yeah,
Bonnie.
I can also put it in there.
It's
I can
a
also put
separate
it in there.
site. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just a reminder, if I haven't just said your name, if you can say who you are before speaking so that everybody has the access, that would be great. Thanks so much. So there's a couple of city things that I noticed via Twitter that I wanted to share. Starting this month, the city will be making pedestrian safety and accessibility improvements around Davis Square. The planned improvements include ADA compliant curb ramps and crosswalks around the 5 Street intersection of Highland, College, Holland, Dover, and Elm Streets. There does not appear to be work scheduled to address the unsafe curb cuts and crosswalks that are further down Highland near the Burren, and sidewalk repairs are also not part of this work. And there's a link that I can also drop in the chat that shows the study, or sorry, not the study, but the website that has details and more info on this. And in another streetscape project, there's a virtual community meeting regarding Western Washington Street mobility improvements on Wednesday, September 28th at 6 p.m. And city staff are going to provide an update on the project timeline, share public survey responses, present designs that are being proposed between Washington Street from Line Street to Webster Ave, and get public feedback. I note in the chat that Brian is offering to give a longer update on the Davis Square curb cuts, which I'm happy to have you do after my last piece, which is that the Racial and Social Justice Department had a table at the Summer Streets event on Highland Ave this past weekend, and Holly represented the commission. Holly, do you want to share anything about that?
It was a beautiful rainy day, and there were lots of people that came, and there were 4 of us there. Got lots of interest in what the entire RSJ department does, and I tried really hard to entice people to look at our commission for being a potential commissioner, and it was a good day. What do you think, Adrian? Anything you want to add to that?
No, you said it all, Holly. Thank you for being there. It was a bit of a rainy day. Yeah, so we're excited that Holly was able to be there and represent the commission, and I will certainly update this commission as more of those types of opportunities come up from RSJ.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Holly and Adrian. Brian, if you want to share with us about Davis Square. And I think we should keep it fairly like high level given OML. Great, thank you.
Yeah, this is Brian, and for those who don't know me, I'm also the director of the engineering division. We were able to move some resources around this fall and be able to move forward with upgrading the wheelchair ramps and crosswalks in the heart, in the main intersection of Davis Square. There are some wheelchair ramps that we can't do right away because of some other construction that's going on, and those will be done in the spring, and that's primarily over like by Oath and CVS. And then right now we're putting into the contract for next year I would say more of a make safe repair the brick with concrete sidewalks in the heart of Davis Square. It is purely just to create a safe, accessible route. It is not intended to be the final construction for Davis Square by any means, but we can't wait till the final reconstruction of Davis Square to make that to make those corridors fully accessible.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Brian. Just to clarify, I hear you saying you're going to put concrete over the bricks, or is this just patching specific areas?
Actually, right now, the plan is to take a 5 to 6 foot wide accessible route on the sidewalk, mostly between the trees and the back of sidewalk, and cut out the brick and replace it with concrete sidewalk on those stretches. This isn't in a contract yet, but the goal is to get into a contract and should be able to execute it next summer at the earliest. But it depends a lot on other construction phasing of when we can actually get on the ground to do it.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. That's really exciting. And I'm glad that the city has acknowledged that that is a safer option for wheelchair users. And I hope that Grove Street can also be included in that, since that is
One side of Grove
a
Street.
connector, but
We're doing,
that's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, the
That's-
Kenny Park side, we're not going to remove the brick at Kenny Park because they're in really good condition. But the remainder of it is, yeah, all the way down to Davis Quarters.
Great. Thank you. That's an excellent update. All right. So moving on to our next topic of business, an election for the chair of this commission. Before we do this, I just want to clear up, there was some confusion when I said last month that I would be stepping down as chair, that meant I was leaving the commission. That's not my intention. I am just not going to be in the chair role. So commissioners, anyone interested in taking that role?
Be happy to do it, Bonnie. This is Holly.
Thank you, Holly. Would somebody like to formally nominate Holly for the position of chair of this commission?
This is Brian Postwaite. I nominate Holly Simeone as the chair of the commission.
Great. And do we
This
have a
is
second?
Leon. I would be happy to second.
Great. So on the motion, aye,
Aye.
Aye.
and I see an aye from Katie Milton as well. And Holly, I think you're allowed to vote on yourself as
I'm
well.
going to abstain. Thank you.
Abstain? All
No,
right, great.
appropriate.
The motion passes. Welcome, Chair Simeone. The meeting is now yours.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. But okay, the baton's been hit in the head. Got it.
This is Bonnie. I'm here for support, of course. So
Okay. Communication plan. Before we go to that, I just wanted to see, Adrian, if there's anything you'd like to talk about as well.
No, not at this time. I'm excited to see your communications plan. And then the only thing I will say, preceding that is that I, as your staff liaison, are the link through the city process for communication. So whatever you all end up deciding or creating and supporting that. So I'll just leave that there and I will let you go, Chair.
Thanks, Adrian. Again, this is Holly. The idea of the communication plan was probably 5-6 weeks ago. And what I was thinking was really having some organization around the things that we discuss and be able to measure them and see who's sort of leading the charge. And, we all are very busy people. We have lots of priorities as part of the commission and as part of being human beings. And I thought it would be good if we could have a document that we use, but that was also public facing, so people would know what we're working on. And many of us have brought up ideas, I believe Jamie has in the past, and definitely Henry, about ways to promote what we do. And many of these things are, zero cost items, but they are time. There is a time constraint for them, so people need to be able to move them through. So this is more of a fluid conversation about ideas. I'm hoping that the captioner and Brian will be able to have some notes that we'll be able to look back at. And I just would like to open it up to, I know, Jamie, if you have anything about this subject, and as well as Henry and then anyone else who would like to talk about it. I see Henry with a hand. You want to kick us off? I can't hear you.
This is Jamie. Henry, you need to, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, my mic, get better?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. I hate shouting into the void. I have that sensation often anyway. I think that there are some things we can do to use the media, both new and old, like holding events, sending out press releases 3 weeks before the event, following up with the media, maintaining media contacts. I think we can do a lot more with our website to make our meetings, the meeting transcripts, and documents and resources that we identify in the meeting or that we feel are useful to the general public. I wasn't really prepared for this question, so I don't have the whole list in mind, but I would be happy to circle back and work with whoever else has an interest in this to assist in drafting it, if that would be helpful. Thank you. That is all. Oh, and this was Henry.
Thanks, Henry. And I don't want to put you on the spot, Jamie, but I thought you had some things that fell on this line. If you'd like to speak next, if not, that's perfectly
This
fine.
is Jamie. You are kind of putting me on the spot. I don't remember
That's fine.
what you're talking about, what you might be thinking of that I had suggested in the past. But you know, if you have a thought about what it was, maybe I can remember.
Okay. Sorry, Jamie, I don't mean to put you on the spot. It was more of and the same with you, Henry. It was more of we brought these things up, thought we would throw it out there, gather some ideas, and then possibly create some type of a subcommittee or working group that can start to organize these and then get more input. I just think that, you know, we do a fantastic job talking with each other and sharing stories, and we have great ideas. But I'd love to see us have more tracking and be able to see the progress. And I'm very visual. I still use paper and electronics, but I just thought that we could sort of, yes, put the communications process into a tool. So does anyone else?
Yeah, Holly, can you see my hand? It's Harriet.
I will. I think I saw Leon's first and
Oh,
then.
sure.
Here. Mr. Leon?
Yeah, this is Leanne. Mostly just a question as far as website, just what capability do we actually have as far as like what the city is supporting? Because I have never seen like an actual website. I've just seen like the page on the city website with like the list of commissioners. So I was just wondering, do we have a sense of like, are we thinking a page on the city website? Is this a separate website? Like, how much are we able to customize that, or like what documents are we able to have uploaded? And just want to get a sense of that before putting too much thought into planning an elaborate website that we really realize we can't actually host.
Understood. Thanks, Leon. I would say that you brought up a really good point. We have an existing site through the city, and maybe a group decides that maybe there needs to be another piece. I've seen other commissions, I don't know if it's Facebook, or they use other different types of social media to communicate things. And I think that discussing what different options we have and what we want to get out there, and you know me, I'll just ask, you know, I'm all for, well, what do you think? Let's try it, throw all the ideas at me, and then we'll sort of chisel it down and decide what's manageable and what's a priority. So I just thought an open conversation was sort of where this was first started.
Yeah. And
like
Leanne, again, just
your idea.
a follow-up to that. Do we have a contact for who maintains the existing page on the city website? And are we able to sort of collaborate with them if we do decide that we want to flesh that out any?
Without a doubt, I know that the city would love to collaborate with us. And I know Adrian will be able to help direct us to how we would do that. And then there's just a matter of discussing what our goals are and what's doable. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
I think you were next, Harriet, and then Bonnie.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is sort of stretching the communication, and at this meeting or another, I'd love to extend it, is you spoke of things being on paper. Well, one of the things that came up in a in a Partners for
Another group.
it's another group that I'm in, Partners for Disaster stuff for emergency work for people with disabilities. But one of the things that came up today, and it really is stretches across quite a demographic, people who are older, and not, you know, who may go to the senior center, but may not have a computer and may still have a flip phone, you know. What are ways to get, you know, put up even paper information in certain visible places as an extension of what we're doing? It's just a thought I wanted to plant here, you know, to have people think about as a part of that too.
Thanks, Harry. You know, maybe part of what you're saying is to actually do some outreach to individuals that either we don't feel are connected to us, or maybe we don't understand what is the best way for them to receive and send information. So maybe part of a communication plan is also who is our target audience, and how do we measure if this meets their needs? And I think that what you're talking about is a really good example of that. And I'm sure there's other groups that people could bring forward or have ideas about, or we could simply check in with and say, these are what we think we're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think extendedly, you know, church communities, different language church communities, you know, all sorts of things. Now, obviously, you have to start probably in a pilot way and try it out to see what we can work through. But just, it really hit me that there are a lot of people who can't use computers or don't have even smartphone facility. So
That's
it.
okay. We'll find a way. They exist across all parts of our city. Everyone here knows they all have a voice. We just have to figure out where it is. Miss Bonnie. Not the chair. Can you just be the table for today? Or
Be the table.
the, I don't know.
This is
Something.
funny. I'll be a wheeled stool. How's that?
Spinny stool. Yes, great.
Stool. Great. So a couple of things in terms of other sites. I don't know if Ginny is still with us, but I know PTAC has a Twitter that they're very active on, that a lot of people pay attention to. So that's definitely one group that we might be able to reach out to for how they manage that, and how that intersects with the city. In addition to the formal website, there is a Facebook page. We do not control that. So I believe Adrian is the person we would work with to post to that. And in terms of communication in general, it's sort of outside, you know, the scope of our own communications, or it includes our own communication. And then further, so one of the things that Jamie had done is put in a lot of work in reformatting the agenda to be more accessible, because it wasn't very accessible. It used to be something that was printed out on paper, and when it got handed to me, there was just a lot going on. And so now it's a lot more streamlined, which I think makes it easier for screen readers and has made it possible to start getting it translated to Braille, because there needs to be simple formatting for that and for any materials. And something that we should be working on is continuing to do the plain language. So I think those are things to think about in terms of our own communication. And definitely, I think getting out flyers and other visual things in the local senior center and other locations about town is good. But I hope we can also, as a rule, anything we're printing to paper also make sure is done in Braille and available at different locations in the city. And I think just in general, like, there's a lot of city accounts that post information that are heavily picture based and don't include alt text. So I think something in our plan should be doing a little more outreach there and educating city staff, because people can't access the information. And I see this all the time on Twitter, where constituents are just writing out what's on these images. And often they're files that are not even accessible to screen readers to make a guess at what's on them. So just
That's
things to think about.
Thank you, Bonnie. That's a great point. I do think a lot of things that we stumble across as persons with disabilities is educating others about what we need or what we're missing. And that, I think, underneath communication really includes education. And, you know, I'm sure at a very high level within the city, there are people aware of plain language. There are people aware of alt text, but maybe that hasn't gone across. And maybe, you know, maybe that's not us to actually make that happen, but maybe that's us to bring it to someone who can then, you know, see it through. So I like all of your ideas as well. I just want to let our non-commission members or attendees tonight know that they're welcome to raise a hand, ask a question, provide a comment. I see hands instantly. I'm not sure if it was Leanne or Joan, but I'm gonna let, it was Leanne. Okay, Leanne, you have the floor.
One thing, tying it into the, like, making sure information is available at places like senior centers, I think it would also be great, once we do start having, you know, relatively regular things we're putting out, whether they're announcements or newsletters or anything, to both online and at any of these places where we are posting information, also have some sort of way to sign up for getting the information directly in a preferred format, whether that's a paper mailing, or if that's like a paper newsletter or email newsletter in a particular language, so that if there are people who have expressed direct interest, we are able to get that information to them directly in the way that works best for them.
Great input. Joan?
Hi, I'm just joining to listen in today. I will have two comments. One of them is I just came from a SAS meeting, Somerville Alliance for Safe Streets meeting, and we were talking about potentially putting some safe streets guidance tips in the Council of Aging's newsletter. They have a monthly newsletter, so if you're looking to reach out to that group, that might also be a great way to do that. The other thing is, it was actually really hard for me to find this meeting. If I just Googled the commission, the meeting didn't come up. I had to like type in the word meeting for the meeting link to come up. Like I can't tell from the web, like the homepage of like how to get to the meetings. So that would just be like my suggestion on like how to find these meetings.
You know what? I appreciate you being here and taking the time. We all appreciate that very much, and the work that you do with SAS. You know, there's a lot of things that overlap with that you work on that are goals at times for us as well. And the tip about the Council for Aging, that's very important. And my background is healthcare and technology, and anything that's more than 3 menus is poor design. And websites have extreme crawl. You know, they just get added to, they're like hospital buildings, they add a branch and nothing makes sense, and then you can't get here. And it's really hard to go back or to move forward with all the information that the city has. But I too have tried to find things, and there are some areas where we don't show up in a pull down list or something isn't here. But part of communication is we need to, when we find those things, move them forward. I think we'll have it in the minutes, what you mentioned. And then I think that those are the things that when we see them, I don't know, Adrian, would that be like a 311 request? Or is that, I mean, you don't have to answer now, but if someone put in a 311 request in the city and said, I've been researching the following, I can't find it on your website, or this doesn't work. Is that the best?
Probably the best in terms of direct and efficiency is probably through me, to reach out to the web team if there's something not, and I've already taken note of what was just previously said.
Great.
So I will check into that. And then of course, everybody has my email, and, or if you want to do it through Holly and she can talk to me about it. I'm always happy to check on stuff if it's not appearing or it's not showing up the way it should.
Yeah, please don't use me as the first pass. Please reach out directly to someone who can do the work. I'm happy to help if you're stuck, but I don't want to be the person who sticks you and slows you down. So thank you.
No, that's fine. Whatever is best,
exactly.
I'm always happy to check into it.
Who else had a hand up? Harriet. And we're gonna have to sort of wrap this up in the next 10 minutes or so. It doesn't mean the conversation ending, but just so we can move on and
Yes. My name is Frank Lee, and I'm Harriet's partner. This is actually about a previous issue, the curb cuts issue. One thing that we've noticed about the curb cuts is that whenever it rains or snows, the curb cuts get filled with rain, snow, and mud, and that I think is an accessibility problem.
it is.
There needs to be a solution.
Bonnie's got a very forward hand.
This is
Right.
Bonnie. Yeah, I just wonder if Brian can tell us whether the crosswalks that are scheduled are going to be raised, because we know that that eliminates a lot of that because it makes it so that there isn't that dip.
Oh, right.
Holly, do you want to do this detour?
Sure.
I'm
So,
happy to. It's a really short answer.
oh, please, Brian. if-
Okay.
um,
The short answer is that, again, this is Brian Polstwaite, Commissioner and Director of Engineering. It's a multifaceted answer. One, we try to put in raised crossings wherever they make sense for all of the variety of implications that they have. We're actually trying to do more raised crossings on side street crossings. So like if you're walking down the long length of a corridor, you're not having to go up and down on every side street. And the raised crossings do help minimize the gutter collection of flow. For the remainder of them, we do try to make sure that that's not a low point. And that resolves most of that concern. But to be honest, we don't always have the ability to adjust the grades and the line on the street so that we can eliminate that entirely. It's an extraordinarily challenging problem to solve in some areas without full reconstruction of the street.
Thank
Okay,
you.
understood. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Harriet.
So about 9 more minutes. Leanne, you wanted to add to the conversation?
Yes, this is Leanne. I had a follow-up to Joan's point about difficulty finding the meeting. I did actually find the commission's page on the Somerville website. And I don't know that this is a full solution to the problem because finding that page was itself somewhat difficult. But I'm noticing that there is not any mention on that page of our meetings, not a link to them, not even a this is when they happen. So I think that that would be a good low-hanging fruit of making sure that that information is there. So if people do find the page for the commission itself, they don't have to then search again to find the information about the meeting specifically.
Thanks, Leanne. Last call for comments on this subject. I'm not really able to read the chat and look for arms, so, anyone else want to add to the conversation? I don't see any. Christopher? Oh. Go ahead, Bonnie.
This is Bonnie. I was just going to say that the meeting is linked from the city calendar page, but I think unless you're somebody who is already big into Somerville politics, you don't know that that page exists. So.
Well, Nothing's like a good website that has more webs, so you can reach everything from multiple places. It's good design. Sometimes it bites you though. Anyone? Okay, oh. Hi, Chris, right? Not Christopher, or do you go by Christopher?
Christopher,
Christopher,
Christopher from the Human Rights Commission is, you're talking about communication plan, from what I understand. And maybe you box me into a different part of your agenda tonight, but there's a few potential cross sections. So I'm a Human Rights Commissioner for City of Somerville, and there's a few interests that we would love to work on together. Last year, what we did in the fall was we had a meeting where we talked about the intersection of civil rights and people with disabilities when it came to hate incidences. So we had a night where the Civil Rights Unit came and spoke specific cases to that and how to report, and some links. In terms of your conversation at the moment about an outward facing document, I applaud you and commend that. And it's something our own commission would benefit from your spearheading and modeling. So Chair, back to you. And if you'd like, I would extend kind of my comments along the lines of where potential intersections that I had brainstormed, and you could kind of possibly put them into a future business conversation. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. I also think that monthly meetings are hard to get input or show progress, or really they're kind of more high level in my opinion. So and I know we have some working groups, so I think we would really need some people to dedicate some time. And I think that our all of our different types of commissioners that are on the call here have amazing experiences and life stories to add to this. And I think asking if they're interested in leading something like the communication plan, or leading how maybe we work across other commissions like yours, the Women's Commission, and several of them do roll up into RSJ also. Adrian, I do have a question, but yes, Christopher, I think those are great pieces, and writing something once and reusing it multiple times is another old software thing, but that's really what the goal is, right? If you write it and you share it, and then other people can use it, as long as it doesn't become a website. Adrian, how do what other commissions fall under RSJ? Forgive me that I can't remember.
Well, the one that Chris represents, the Human Rights Commission, and then in addition to that, the Women's Commission.
Okay. Ronnie, you're gonna have to help me here. Continued business.
Yes, Chair Simeoni, that would be accessible parking funds. On the agenda, we have share information on possible spending, and if we come to consensus, vote on projects to fund.
Okay, Katie gets 2 votes tonight. Just kidding. 1 1/4 vote.
She's learning. She's asking me questions about accessible a cutout. What's a cutout? She wanted to know. So that's
I think you should be there every night.
okay. Well, back to mute. Sorry.
It's okay. I also think, like Christopher said, there is probably overlap. Our accessible parking funds. Do you know this information, Christopher?
I'm listening. Yep.
Okay, so there's a piece of legislator at this legislation. I believe it starts at the federal level, it then trickles down into the state, and we're fortunate enough that Somerville has adopted this Mass General Legislator that creates our commission, and also has adopted using the handicap parking funds, the fines that are collected, and funneling them through, it's a very long, well-managed process. And we now have this, the tools and the resources and the structure to understand how we can use those funds. And the overarching rule is they are there for enhancing the lives of persons with disabilities in the city of Somerville. That's it. And there is clearly the structure and a process and the amounts and how this gets involved in approvals, but the piece that's the most important is we have such a great opportunity for those things. And I think there's, you know, I know Jamie, I had gone back and forth with you on email, and then I quickly disappeared, talking about discussing some of the things and doing some research on ideas of where needs were. And we also had the Women's Commission talking about, Bonnie, remind me, after school.
This is Bonnie. Not the Women's Commission. We had somebody from I'm going to fail at names. She's a Somerville parent that.
Was that Julia Toof with
Yes.
the, there was a name for it, but it was
Oh, it's
basically a
called,
Parents Commission with children with disabilities.
Katie, I think, knows this.
All right, go Katie.
Hi, oh, hold on, I can get it. Hold on, I know what it is. It's like SNCC or something, or no.
We
it's
can just call her Julia.
Julia Tooth, TOF.
Julia Tooth, yes. And she was looking for some help about how to create programs that are more inclusive or appropriate for students who need different services from the city. And so I think maybe, Christopher, there are things that in your commission that are challenges that, and I'm not saying I'm opening the door to your commission. I'm just like, for all of this, I'm just saying this is clearly, we are transparent. We are a city. Everything we do is public. And I think that it's important that your commission and others know that, you know, input and ideas, there'll be some type of a way to send those in a manageable format are important to us. You know, like the overlap is there. I think it's understanding how do we, with one action, enable more than one thing to happen, sort of fix it for other people. Here we go, Jamie. Put Jamie on the spot again. Would you mind talking about any of that? If you don't have any updates, that's fine.
This is Jamie. I don't have any updates. I had done some initial contacting of people between the previous meeting of this commission and the one before that to try to get a conversation started, but then things kind of got busier for me. So I believe the last thing that has happened was shortly after last month's commission meeting, I forwarded everything to you.
Oh, okay. In an email?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not embarrassed to say that my unread email account at the moment is 8,166. And of that, 7,594 are not junk, or at least haven't been moved to junk yet. So you are very important and I'm going to find them. This is why I always tell people, oh, you emailed me. Okay. You can laugh out loud, Bonnie. You should be. And Brian, you don't have to hold back. It's all perfectly fine.
You haven't seen my inbox.
This is Leanne. I have finally got to this February. I finally checked the email from, so I know exactly where you're at.
I somehow got on a bagel list this week. I'm like, why am I getting bagel spam? Like, come on, I can't even find like important things. I don't need bagel updates. Okay. So
Also, just going back 3 steps, Special Education Parent Advisory Council, or CPAC.
Spec, Katie. It was good. That was it. So, Bonnie, I'm a little, oh, I see your hand is up, Bonnie. Please. Help
This is
me.
funny. I'm only laughing out loud because mine is 15,194. So I've got you beat twice over. I don't think there's an award for it. Maybe there should be. It wouldn't be a good award. But in terms of funding, I had an update that I wanted to share on a
Please
topic I
do.
had brought out. Sorry, I'm going to get attacked by a cat in a second. So I had brought up accessible bikes and the possibility of working with some local adaptive organizations to try and do some one-off days in terms of allowing people with disabilities access to bikes in Somerville, in preparation to try and like have something before doing a full-on program. There's some other cities that keep bikes year-round. It's pretty complicated, I think, in Somerville, mostly because of space. We would need space to store the bikes and also staff to help fit people to the bikes and sort of unlock them and lock them up, because many people with disabilities can't just walk up and grab a bike on their own and get going. Like I'll use myself as an example. I need to wheel and then my wheelchair needs to go somewhere and I need to transfer and the height has to be correct. And so anyway, I spoke with one of those organizations, Waypoint Adventure, and they are booked on programs through June of 2023. So
they're a really large organization with lots of people helping, or there's just a huge need?
This is Bonnie. There's just a huge need. They're actually a fairly small organization with some robust volunteers, and they've been working to build in staff capacity, but they don't have enough staff to run as many programs as are desired. I know Somerville school system that works with them already has also asked about more programming, and unless they find more staff, they're not going to be able to do that this year. So I'm not dropping it. I think it's still useful. There's Spalding Rehab that we might be able to partner with. But I just wanted to give the update that I don't think it's going to be a thing that we end up funding in the next 8 to 10 months, because there's not capacity. But I know SAS is also interested in this. And I don't know if Joan wants to speak on that. No pressure. I know there might not be a lot of info now. I just want to make sure people knew that they're also interested in helping brainstorm this. And yeah.
Now, Joan, you're on the spot.
So this is Joan. I think we were hoping, well, we would like to help in any way that we can. And I don't know that we can help with the staffing issues but I think it sounds like the Rite Aid was suggested as like a potential, the Rite Aid parking lot was suggested as a potential location for these adaptive bicycle storage location. And it sounds like Lance Davis is very on board with that, but I guess we're back to the staffing. So SAS is ready to help with support in any way that this group feels like is helpful.
Leon?
This is Leon. I remember at some point there had been mention of potentially a different city who was doing it by partnering with a bike shop. Has anyone reached out to probably the Ace Wheel Works, just in terms of proximity to the bike path, to see if they have the capacity on both like staffing and space, and would potentially be interested in doing some sort of partnering of like hosting a couple accessible bikes or adaptive bikes and being, on hand to assist with whatever, getting people on and, up the block to the actual bike path?
you know, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt your thought for a second, Leanne. I apologize.
Oh, no, that was the end of my thought.
There are multiple different types of accessible bikes because there's lots of different needs that people have in a bike. And we used to go as a family every year. DCR would have an accessible event and they would showcase all these different bikes, and they had this like area where all these different types could be tested out and see what they're about. It wasn't a selling event. It was showing you the types of bikes, and you know, they made sure everything was fit to the person, and you know, like in my case, my daughter and I both were on the bike. You're in just in a little circle, and then you could actually take the bike and go along the path there. And I think there might have even been information about grants or how to obtain bikes for personal use. But the one thing that always got us was they're huge. Depending on the age of the person who needs them, they can age out quickly. You know, they become something that's not as useful. But there is it's like used to be a guy in a van who goes around and picks up accessible equipment, which includes bikes, and he freshens them up and he gives them to another person who needs them. Carry it forward. Oh, I'm never going to remember the name, but I know it still exists. So there are people that have knowledge. And I think that I love the idea. It sounds like many of us like this idea, and then there's other people who'd like to help with this. So if we were a voting group, I would say, Jamie, that sounds like something good on your list that we should talk about a little more. I do think that either funding someone who can run a clinic and introduce the different types of bikes to people in a safe environment, so that where we or the city are not responsible for that. But, you know, I just think, how could we fund this? And also we could communicate on funding resources, or possibly ask individual groups, say, special education department or parks and recreations, just people that their focus would include biking, and see what would help them. Miss Bonnie.
This is Bonnie. I think Joan had a hand up first. I'm happy to wait. Or I can, yeah, so a clinic is what I was talking about. So I'd reached out to Waypoint Adventure, who have a collection of adaptive bikes. Primarily, they have tandem bikes. They do a lot of work with autistic, primarily teenagers, but some young adults as well. A lot of people who are blind and people who have intellectual disabilities. And they may or may not now have one hand cycle as well. There was somebody in Somerville getting rid of one that I connected them to, and they were planning on picking it up. But their collection is a lot smaller than DCR's. So Spalding Adaptive also has a huge collection, probably even bigger than DCR's. They do programs weekly during the summer where you can sign up for access to a bike, and they pair you up with somebody who fits you, and you sort of send in information beforehand. And then I hadn't thought about DCR, but yeah, I've been to their adaptive rec fair, and they might be another good person to partner with. So that's exactly what I meant about funding something short term. So I think adding DCR to the list of people to reach out to would be good.
Excuse me, this is Harriet. What is DCR? Department of Recreation? No, what is it?
Yeah. Department of Conservation and Recreation.
Okay, good.
A reminder to define things.
Parks, all that great stuff. I thought Brian was next. I'm not sure. Would you like to go now?
This is Brian. The conversation moved on and we landed where I thought we were going. So never mind.
So you're happy?
I'm happy.
Excellent. Joan?
I was going to like help brainstorm a little bit here, if you don't mind. Is this something that might make, yeah, is this something that makes sense to do, given our limited space, to do with Cambridge or like Boston? So I'm thinking of like some of the bigger green spaces, like maybe it's something on Memorial Drive, maybe it's something that happens in the Navy Yard. Kind of the two organizations or two cities could maybe potentially pool their resources. Looks like Bonnie has an answer.
Go ahead, Bonnie. What's your answer?
This is Bonnie. Yeah, so it's not Memorial Drive, but Soldiers Field Road is off of there. That big park is where DCR does their annual rec fair. And the Navy Yard is basically where Spalding operates out of. Their building is in Charlestown, and they have a whole adaptive rec building, and you start out there and people bike all along the piers, and then if you have enough energy, you also bike over into Cambridge over that bridge at North Point Park and around there. So I think the idea is people have been talking about, like, wouldn't it be great if Somerville had something dedicated? And it wasn't just these one-off days. So the long term would be to have a robust program that exists year round, so people don't just have to do the one-offs and don't have to travel for it. But I think teaming up with them to try and do something closer for people is totally possible. And certainly if we're talking about communications, we should stay abreast of what events are already existing and start broadcasting them, because a lot of people probably are unaware. So that's a super useful reminder there.
So there's a group, it's called like maybe it's Access America. It's a nonprofit. They do adaptive, probably biking, but definitely boating. And they are connected through Spalding. And so you've heard of them, Bonnie. Anyone else heard of them? I don't know. It's been a long time since I had an opportunity to engage with them. But Access Sports. I was just getting an answer back from John. Access Sports, that's what it's called. So I guess we have lots of good ideas. Leanne?
This is Leanne. In terms of partnering with other cities, I, on the one hand, would slightly hesitate just in terms of the farther away things are, the harder it is for people to get to them. And that introduces another barrier to entry. But one potential is, and I don't know how good of an idea this is because I haven't actually ever been there myself, so I have no idea like how crowded it is or how much space there actually is. But I know Cambridge closes down, I believe it's Memorial Drive every weekend to car traffic. So that could be a potential for a not literally any time, but that feels like a good place if we wanted to have like a regular mobile thing of there'll be a group that brings a set of bikes here every weekend, and then not quite the same like just a one-off. And then that also was sort of where I was going with, like, can we partner with a bike shop to host us? Probably not the size of a fleet that we would ideally want, but that could be a way to sort of start up a permanent program without needing to completely build up the space and the staffing from nothing. So if there is anyone that has that capability that would be interested in partnering, I think that could be a good way to have at least a few options available anytime.
Thanks, Leanne. What about if we had an event, a low-key event? I'm not sure what it would be exactly, but it would be around bikes and accessibility. But maybe if we approach acquiring the bikes more as grants. So we talked about accessible biking. We invited a few different people, maybe someone, from DSR, it was an event or something, but maybe the commission decided, instead of trying to figure out where to keep the bikes or who needs a bike, to ask different organizations, like maybe it's this, maybe it's a therapy group within the city that works with people. Maybe it's someone that deals with different people who would need bikes or would use them more, and therefore we fund the actual bike, but they then are the ones to make sure it's maintained, trained, used. I'm just thinking of ways to get bikes out there and bike safety for all, but that way, you know, the individual groups would know what they need or what they're looking for. If anyone, I see some heads moving, but that was just a thought. Joan?
So I was going to say to Leanne's point, that's what I did mean about like Memorial Drive shutting down once a week. That seemed like a good opportunity. Another idea that maybe Brian can chime in a little bit on is there is a new building going up in Assembly Row right next to 93 that is supposed to be building a bike homage thing. So they apparently we used to assemble bikes in Somerville, and they're gonna have like they're gonna have like displays of bikes and bike storage, and it's seemingly meant for the community. And Assembly Row also has a lot of like good open space for biking. So it's obviously not like this year, but it might be a good possibility for something in like the next year or the future if we get in. Like I think they're still configuring the floor space. So it could be something where we talk about like potentially funding that space to hold these bikes and be able to check them out there.
That's nice.
Yeah, this is Brian. I have not heard of that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Most new buildings are required to have a certain percentage of their square footage for community uses. But that community uses can be like delegated to a particular operation or nonprofit group or so forth. So it's actually a pretty good idea to try to leverage developers' desire to fill that space with something that might be fitting their other social goals that they're trying to show.
Yeah, the Assembly Square, the original piece, is really hard to tell where it was, not at, as I call it, disassembled square, but the original Assembly Square where the Christmas tree store is, and TJ Maxx, which is where I go to seek church and quiet. That used to be a Ford plant. That's where they assembled cars, wasn't it? Brian, you're shaking your head, maybe. So, and that's actually the shell of it, when they gutted it, they had to keep that specific shell because that was the original plant. And that's how I believe it became Assembly Square, because in high school, I used to work there when they first revised that. And the disassembled square now was sort of a green field, and there was a taxi back there, and it's they're both lovely areas now, but I never heard about the bike piece. I'm sure there were other in that area where they assembled bikes too, but yeah. Leanne?
Yeah, this is Leanne. I love the idea of having a permanent place with sufficient space to actually have a decent fleet in Assembly. I think ideal would be one in Assembly and one more central, just because it can be so hard to travel between them, even if you're not disabled, but especially if you are. But finding a space along the bike path feels harder. But one thought I just had that I don't know enough about what's going in to know if there's a good option. But with the Green Line extension and extending the bike path, does anyone know if there are either existing buildings or development in process that is on that bike path extension that could be a potential place that could store a fleet of bikes?
Good question. Anyone have comments? I'm not aware of any.
This is Bonnie. As far as I know, they're putting it
Harry,
up.
I don't think, I don't know for sure.
Harry, are you talking or to the on the meeting or did you go on unmute by mistake?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I just wasn't sure if you were addressing us or if the
No,
unmute
I
button
was.
slipped.
I was from walking over to Lowell Street from Davis Square numerous times with friends. We have not, or people have not commented, and I'm usually noticing if they're large buildings, as it were. You know, there's apartment complexes and private residences. I think as you get toward the station, there's open land, but beyond that, there's not enough specificity to it. Probably looking on Google Maps might be on Google Earth might be a good way to check it out. That's all. Thanks.
Doesn't Brian, you're always like my thought of my bike expert. With Blue Bikes, do they offer accessible bikes? Well, that would be a good business to invest in.
Yeah, I don't believe no, they do not have accessible bikes that I'm aware of.
That's unfortunate. Does anyone know if any other community has a program like this?
This is Bonnie. Yes, that's why I started bringing this up. There's many other communities. I've talked about a few of them. Acton recently started one up. They have it as part of their Parks and Recreation. They have a big open green space next to a river. And so they check bikes out during certain hours for 3-hour chunks. Portland, Oregon is the one that partners with a bike shop, and they have a pretty robust program. There's a lot of other cities that do it. Many people have approached Blue Bikes. Blue Bikes does not have an interest in providing accessible bikes. There was a different company that did sort of a trial run of some accessible bikes, but that company I think is either no longer in existence or not in the Boston area. But in terms of a couple of things that were mentioned, so Ace Wheelworks are who Spalding uses to service their bikes. It doesn't seem to me like they have a lot of space, but I think that would be a great arena if SAS had somebody with the capacity to talk to them, because they certainly know how to service the bikes and they're probably familiar with fitting them or would be open to learning. I just don't know if they have the space. As far as by the bike path, there are no buildings that are planned. There is a park that's in process for being planned, but it doesn't have a ton of space. It's not very wide. It's kind of a long, narrow strip. And there's, as far as I know, there's not really a lot of space there. I think Assembly is probably the most promising for doing long-term bike storage. And it's probably a good time if Joan can find that plan to talk to the developer, because while all of the new buildings are putting in bike space, I have only seen one with anything that could remotely be considered enough room for adaptive trikes. When we toured Montage, I think is the name of it. It's a huge
Misella, I think.
Misella. Oh yeah, Misella, which is one of the new large buildings at Assembly for housing. They have a really large bike room. It's the size of a garage. It'll fit hundreds of bikes. And of that entire place, there were 2 spots that somebody who uses a wheelchair and a trike could maybe access it, like have enough space to roll in, get a bike of that size in and out. And you know, there's also cargo bikes that people have that are going to be competing for those spots. So I think if there's already a developer planning to do some sort of big bike space, getting in now to talk to them about ensuring there's room would be good.
So we need accessible bike parking. Or flexible, accessible bike parking.
This is Leanne. Yes, and not just in developments, but also in general, like on-street bike parking or on sidewalk or however. A lot of the existing bike racks aren't really set up to take anything that isn't, you know, your standard 2 wheels in 1 line, without anything, you know, whether it's a trailer or a trike or you know, a cargo trike versus a hand trike, like none of that is really set up for, or the bike racks aren't really set up to accommodate that. So that's not just, you know, bike rooms in developments, but just in general, accessible bike parking is, yes, a thing.
Hey, Katie, I met you the first time you were on a bike.
Yeah.
We had kids, you were getting on the bus to go to a Girl Scout camp.
Yeah.
I was literally declinging Ava from me because she disliked that camp so much.
That is how we met. That is how we met.
Do you have any feedback? with-
I think my
Bikes
only
and-
feedback is, and again, sorry, we're just finished bath time, which is always fun.
That's okay.
You know, I just really like the idea of having a fun event to kind of like promote the organization, to promote the committee and to promote the, you know, the safe streets. And hold on, now I'm saying, that's all I'll say is that I really like the idea of having a time where people getting together and just have a nice time. And so I like the idea of using funds to sponsor that.
So a community event hosted.
Yeah, and just like bringing up maybe people who, a community who doesn't always get to participate in some of these things and just have it be for them. And I just think that's a really positive thing. And that's all. I don't know anything else about accessibility, but yeah, that's my thoughts.
Okay. I think we're at the any other comments section that I've just magically added to the agenda in invisible ink. Any other topics or business? I don't think I would love for us to have voted on projects to fund. I wish I had like a list of some sort of ideas that we could vote on and sort of put our arms around and figure out how to do that. I certainly think that a fun event is on there. Bikes is on there. My brain just shut off for the rest of my notes.
Could I add something to your list here or just sort of summarize what I think I heard? This is Harriet.
Yep, I have blank. I have room.
Okay, so what I was going to say is what I'm hearing is in the short term, a fun event, which even conceivably could publicize the accessible biking and sort of be a seed planting for interest and support for a longer term project, which I hope we can work out who might research the Assembly Square Mall building or buildings and some of the other possible options that would create a more ongoing opportunity for accessible bikes and bike maintenance, not all in our laps, but maybe distributed with different partners. So yeah, I see it as there's a long term and then there's a fun, enjoyable event to bring us together. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Leanne?
Yeah, I don't have any ideas on the actual implementation of this, so not a long discussion, but just to add to your list of potential areas that we've talked about and should probably explore on the Suter end is the after-school programs.
After school camp is another big one. Henry, you've been too quiet.
I was trying to educate myself about cities that have adaptive bikes. It looks like Portland, Oregon had a pretty extensive program and then maybe dumped it and donated the bikes and replaced them with electric adaptive bikes. But it looks like the program in Detroit that I put in chat is maybe still active. I can look into this further and try to better inform myself and let you know if I find something that might give us some guidance.
I have a general question, Adrian. As far as commission rules, I know we cannot debate things outside of our meetings or discuss things that will be put to a vote. But how can we communicate either through email, exchanging ideas or answering? It looks like you know how, Henry. I just sometimes feel blocked, like I can't say, hey, I think these 3 things, or does anyone know about this? Just sort of in the gathering of information. How do we do
Adrian,
it?
I don't want to jump ahead since you had a question from the chair.
I appreciate that, Henry. I will say, I think Henry, I know a lot about OML and Robert's rules, but we do know that Henry's sort of our resident expert in those things. I have been a part of other board meetings where there's just a dedicated chunk of time on the agenda that's public for this, you know, just sort of brainstorming and talking things out, and then making a plan on when you want to take action on those things, whether that's a further agenda down the road. And in that brainstorming, that's a great opportunity. If you need more information on a particular thing in order to make that decision the next time around, that you delegate somebody or you use your staff liaison or so forth and so on. And then that person can come back to that next meeting and present that, you know, before the decision is made. That has been my experience, but I'm happy to hear Henry's thoughts as well.
May I be recognized by the chair?
Oh, yes, Henry. Yes, please go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Adrian, you probably know more about this than I do, but what I would suggest is that it's not that we can't talk to each other. We can't talk to each other secretly. I see some heads. Would you say that's accurate? We have, if we have a discussion that includes a quorum of the committee, that has to be discoverable. So we don't delete it. We keep it separate so we can find it. That's my suggestion. Is there somebody else who can comment from the city perspective? Oh, and this was Henry.
Brian, do you have something to add? I have a feeling
Yeah.
you have knowledge there.
This is, again, Brian Postwaite. What I've always been told after working through a couple committees and commissions and open meeting law and working with the council is that members can talk to each other outside of the meeting. Members cannot talk to each other outside of the meeting if they constitute a quorum. And so it's fine for there to be one-on-one or one-on-one-on-one conversations, but in this group, I think a quorum is constituted by 3 people right now. So you could do a one-on-one conversation, but you couldn't have 3 of us in the room outside of the public meeting.
Can I send an email and ask for feedback or share information? It's not something to vote on.
You cannot send an email asking for feedback if the recipients can reply all. So the best practice is to, if you want to receive feedback from all the members about it. Like if you want to ask for members to submit items for the agenda, or you have a question about dates, the best practice is just to have everybody on blind CC, so nobody can respond all. That it isn't absolutely wrong to have a group email list, but it's really, really easy to run afoul if it's just coordinating agenda and dates and schedules or announcements. You can have a group email, but it's really easy to get beyond that and get into a conversation. And as soon as you're conversing about a topic that's germane to the commission, you are violating open meeting law.
So the thing that I understand exactly what you're saying and the reasoning, and none of us would want to do that, to jeopardize the commission or our roles. But it's really hard when you receive you're part of a blind copy email to know who else has this information, or, you know, just to be able to talk about it. Like if just like my family, just a general email goes out and I don't know what friends are on it or who got this or who didn't. I don't know to share it to someone else, say, hey, did you hear about this? And I understand it's very different because of what our structure is, but how someone like me, who has issues with communication, understand like how do we do that? I guess I just like, I'm confused. I don't want to take us off topic. I know it's almost 8 o'clock, but Bonnie, do you want to respond?
This is Bonnie. So before I get into that, I just want to note that associate commissioners are not voting members and do not count towards quorum. And we have several associate commissioners. So there can be a smaller than quorum portion of voting members and associate commissioners that can converse outside of these meetings about topics, as long as we do not hit a quorum of voting commissioners. So people that want to help, people that are associates, it is perfectly legal to have those conversations. As far as how to know who it's being sent to, it's trickier, and everybody's right. And I know we've gone over this before, but I will tell you, the email list that I use currently consists of all commissioners and people who routinely attend meetings that have expressed interest in receiving those notices, and a city councilor who has expressed interest. Now, something to think about for the communication plan, it would be trivial to set up a group email for this commission that we can advertise, that people can opt into, that doesn't have a reply function, that is just something to receive information. And I bet this is another thing that SAS could help with, because they've done that for their own. They have an internal email that they use for like the people who run SAS, and they have an external one for the public who want to be kept up to date on various projects they have going on. And so that would be a really great way of like letting the community know you can stay up to date, and sort of you as the chair being able to see who all has opted into that.
Okay. We have 2 minutes left. I can't tell if that's a 6 or an 8. Oh, it was a 6. We have 3 minutes left. Whose hand is the hottest? Anyone have 2 hands they want to raise? Leanne's got 2. Okay, you win.
This is Leanne. Brian covered some of what I was going to say, but my understanding is that you can one-way information transfer is fine. It's just an issue when it comes to discussion. So I think one thing that could be helpful is the sorts of things that you would say in a, updates in a meeting, sending those out as an email, BCCing everyone sooner like if there's something that happens, you know, a week in that would be helpful for people to know. Like if someone's like, I felt inspired to call a bike shop and had a conversation with them and want to report that back. And then we don't have someone a week later going, let me call this bike shop and have the same conversation again. And I think that that sort of thing, rather than starting a discussion and then, you know, if an individual person wants to reach back out for one-on-one, then I think that would be fine, OML wise. And then also just to address the knowing who gets it, I don't know that there is a technical way to definitely know for sure exactly who is sent to, but we could try to just have a social convention of, if you are BCCing, just including in the message a list of this was sent to these people. And yeah, there is some amount of, you have to trust that they're putting the actual list on, but it's better than nothing.
Is that allowed, Adrian, Henry, Ryan, Bonnie, to say to BCC, but then I'm sharing this information with?
Yes, that is fine. The point of the BCC is to keep people from replying all, to have to avoid the conversation. It's perfectly fine to tell everybody who you're emailing this to.
Okay. Got it. Now I understand. All right, who wants to be the last minute call? I think Henry does.
I'll try to keep this very brief.
7 seconds.
Political parties talk about all of these issues and they obey none of these rules. The end. Thank you.
Cool, we're not one of them. But I don't mean that in a bad way, Henry. We are gonna make it work and not break the law, right? Hands in for that.
I don't think you should let yourself be intimidated by this, Holly. I think that there's a power
Okay.
imbalance here, and this only flows downhill.
Now I understand what your perspective was. Thank you. Yes. Understood. I just, if I can do it right the first time, then that's easier for me. Okay, it is at 8:00 and I don't know how many seconds. I appreciate everyone being here. Oops, I broke my pen. I appreciate all of our guests today, and that's it. Oh, we need to have I need a motion to end the meeting.
I move to close the meeting.
This is Leanne, I
Close
second.
meeting.
Adjourn, I think, is the word we're looking for.
You're correct, Henry.
Don't we vote?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alrighty then, we are out. We are adjourned. Bye, everyone.
Thank
I'll
you.
be blind.
Bye.
I'll be blindly emailing you.
Congrats, Chair Miami.
Thanks.
Congratulations to our new chair.
Thank you. You're still the spinny chair. Where'd you go? Bye, everyone.
Bye.